Okay, I'm going to go through the steps I do to reload. A lot of different ways that people do this. I do get a lot of questions on how do I do it, what are my steps, what the process is, different tools to do it with. So we'll start from the beginning. These are all fired brass. So the first thing you need to do, a lot of people do, is they trim them. I trim mine just barely below spec, that way I don't have to trim them as often before they grow to the maximum length. Some cartridges, brass needs trimmed more often than the others. 260 is one of the ones that grows a little more than, let's say, a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6.5 47, or shoulder angle has a lot to do with how often you need to trim your brass, how often your brass grows. So the cheapest way to get into trimming is with the Lee case trimmers. So here's the cutter, and then you buy different pilots or peckers or whatever you want to call them for different stuff. Like here's one for a 308. This is what I started using. I used it for a long time. Your brass does have to be deprimed to use that. I put it on the little shell holder on a drill. So I put the case in the drill, chuck it up, spins. When that hits bottom, you're trimming, but that does have to go through the flash hole. So you do need your brass to be deprimed to do that. So that's the cheapest way to get into it. As far as chamfering also, this is from Lee. It works. It doesn't work as good as others, and it really makes your hands tired holding this thing. This is for the outside, or inside, sorry. Then you just stick it in for the outside. Makes your hands tired holding that. It's small. So other trimmers, like the World's Finest Trimmer, they work well. These are meant to be spun in a drill or a drill press, and they're spinning, so then you just stick the brass in it and trim it to your length. You got to set the cutter bit, which is just an end mill. There's another guy that makes trimmers with a 4-flute end mill. They cut a lot cleaner, a lot faster. So to set your depth, you've actually got to set the set screw on the depth of the end mill. The inserts are like this one's for 6.5 Creedmoor. You can get one for a 308, which works for 260, 243. It goes off the shoulder. So one thing I found out with these, if you are going to chuck them up in a drill or a drill press, brass comes out of those holes and gets everywhere. I mean, it makes a huge mess. So I just put some Scotch tape on it. I can trim like 100 brass. Take the Scotch tape off, blow it out with some canned air in the trash can. Saves a lot of mess. So here's a trimmer that a local guy makes. To adjust the length on it, you can actually dial it in and out. Makes it a lot easier. I kept them both. I set one up for 260 and just leave it. To me, it's worth it, but not having to screw with it. So this is one I have set up for 260. Same thing. You can chuck it in a drill. This is an adapter. But I found the fastest way, because when you have to trim these, you need to deburr them and chamfer them. So I'll show you how I do it. Oh, one more deburr chamfer tool that is totally worth buying is this guy right here. I think Lyman makes it. Nice big handle, easy to hold, doesn't make your hand tired. So when I'm getting in the swing of trimming, I just chuck the brass in the drill. It's trimmed. It's done. And you just go on to the next one. Goes quite fast. Doesn't make your hands tired. You're letting the drill do all the work. Does make a little bit of a mess, but the mess is right here. From the shavings falling out of here. And the shavings from this. When that's spinning, I mean, you get brass everywhere. So, and you could even tape this up now, but I don't, because this isn't spinning. Goes pretty quick. So that's my first step of reloading. This is made by Lee also, the case holder. Works well. Thanks for watching. The next thing I do is anneal my brass. As you can see, it's set up for 300 Win Mag. It's a lot longer case. You have to change this out, you have to change the wheels out. As you can see with a 260 case, you just have that flame way close to that. So that takes a few minutes to change out. We'll come back when that's done. Okay, I'm back. Got it all set up for this shorter case. We'll get a flame going and show you how I use a Templac to see how my heat's looking. We've got the flame running. Use Templac to essentially measure the temperature of the brass. You put this on the inside of the neck. It'll look like that. When that melts, it goes clear. It's about the time you want it to drop out of the flame. So we'll go ahead and run this one so we can see what it looks like. So that's just rotating around. So that did not melt. So we're going to have to put a little more heat to it, or a little more time. We'll be back in a minute. I'm going to prep another piece of brass. Okay. Need just a little bit more. There was still a little bit of Templac in the bottom of that neck that didn't melt off. It's kind of hard to see, but I can see it. There's just a little tiny bit still in that. So we'll just slow the speed down just a touch, or we'll give it a little bit more flame. You can do one or the other. We'll get that adjusted and come back one more time. That's not perfect right there. By the way, the case I use for that, I keep using the same case. It kind of discolors it when you do that. So I have test cases that I use. If you look, it's kind of turn them red looking sometimes. So, you know, the 50 that I'm working on, I still have. So that's my test case. Before I run it again, I let it cool off. I just throw it in my fridge. Takes a couple seconds. Get it about hand warm or so. So now we're ready to just load it up and go ahead and run it. Okay, now we're ready to resize some brass. So we need to set up our sizing die correctly. So I went through and I de-primed these on a decapping die just so that I'm not getting a measurement off the primer at all. So those are sized. I actually need to change my die out real quick from the decapping die. So what we want to do, so Hornady headspace, what do they call it, a Hornady headspace gauge? Hornady lock and load headspace gauge. So we get kind of a baseline 0 on this. So you'll zero that out. These are all fired out of the same gun. And we're only going to bump this back 1 to 2 thou. Any more than that, and it's more than you need. A lot of dies say make it so that the handle cams over when the shell holder touches the die. I've had some dies, when I do that, it sizes almost 7 or 8 thou. So I'm going to go ahead and run one of these through the die and we'll check it out. Okay. So I'm at 2 thou right there. So I just bumped that shoulder back 2/1000ths of an inch. If I bumped it back more than that, I'd want to go ahead and back the die off a little bit. So now I'm doing it on another one. That one's right around 1 thou. That's fine. I'm okay with that. That one's about a 1/2 thou. Depending on how you measure it. There's a little crud on there. As long as that chamber's in your gun alright, without too much force on the bolt, that's plenty. I go for the minimum amount as possible on bumping that shoulder back. My max is 2 thou. So, when you're bumping that shoulder back, if you're pushing that too far back, all of this, somewhere it's got to flex. And it's usually right there. So you bump that back, let's say 7 thou, you fire it, it stretches out, you size it again. That's why you have a case head separation. That's a problem. Spend the money, get this kit, dial your die in. Like I said, I've had dies where, you know, they cam over how they're supposed to, and you're bumping it back 7 or 8 thou. My sizing die now does not cam over. So that's just where my die is set up. Adjust that in and out till it's right there and you should be good to go. So here we're going to chamber the piece of brass. This is the one that was sized or bumped the least amount. They're both unloaded. This is the one that just showed 5/10 of case bump. So we'll put the one in that's already been fired, So that takes a little bit more pressure. Whoops. So then we'll take the one that we bumped back 5/10. Nice, easy. As long as it's less than, well, here's how I do it. As long as it's less than 2 thou, and as long as your bolt closes easy on it, then you're good. So that's it for brass prep. After that, they go in the tumbler. They come out, they're ready to prime. A few of the things: bumping the shoulder. If you don't have the tools that it takes to measure that, you should really get them. Really easy to bump them too much. It'll cause you problems down the road. The annealing is, to me, important. I see an accuracy gain. Makes my brass last longer. A lot of guys don't have a machine like that. That's fine. You'll still get good reloads, just not as good as you could, in my opinion. But there's people that'll argue with that. My brass has been loaded 10 times. It still shoots great. I keep on top of trimming it, making sure I'm not bumping the shoulder back too far. Let's see. Trimming it, yeah, trimming, chamfering, being careful of bumping the shoulder. When it comes to asking other people, hey, what load works good for this gun or that gun? I've reloaded for the same model of gun, the same caliber. Throat lengths are different. Once the brass has been fired out of the gun, the shoulders measure different. Every gun is an individual. So remember that. Some people might tell you, hey, I'm loading 43 grains of H4350 in a 6.5 Creedmoor. Some guns you can get away with that. Some guns you can't. So that's something that you have to put the work into to figure out what load works in your gun. So in my next video, we'll talk about finding bullet seating depth, finding your lands, working up a load, doing a ladder test. And if you're just going to pick a load and go shoot, make sure it's safe as far as the book goes. So don't take somebody else's load that says it's super fast and shoots awesome and go try it. You know, check the book, check the numbers. It's there for a reason. Thanks.